Hello, hello. It's January 25th. It's a SIG Node, weekly SIG Node meeting. Welcome, everybody. We have a few items on agenda today, but let's get started with FOMO fighting. Like if you're afraid you missed something this week, what happened on code development front? We didn't have much happening. We only have 21 PR created this week. We merged 11 and closed 3. Most of the 3 is just work in progress PRs. As we said last week, there was a lot of effort last week to close all the PRs and like clean up things. That's why numbers are so low on closed and merged. Yeah, we grew a little bit on PRs front, but we're still very low on numbers. Like 166 is an unusually low number for SIG Node, and this is a great progress. Thank you, everybody. Now, Ilana, do you want to make an announcement?
Yeah. Welcome, everyone, to the SIG Node meeting. It's me here to pester you about upcoming deadlines. This week, we have our upcoming production readiness review deadline, which is not like a hard freeze or anything like that, but if you don't get your PRR questionnaire completed and a reviewer assigned, we might not get to it in time to approve your thing for the release. So it's kind of like our SLA. So if you could please ensure that you get that filled out by January 27th. I went and I did a pass of all of the node PRs, and I sent an email based on the ones at the time that either like didn't have one, or they did have it, but they didn't have a person assigned or something like that. So you can pick anybody on the list. I think me and Wojtek might be a little oversubscribed, so maybe consider assigning things to either John or maybe David. And I think Matthias is also shadowing this release. Thank you, Matthias. But yeah, we gotta get that stuff reviewed and make sure that your questionnaires are done and filled out so we can get them reviewed. And then similarly, enhancements freeze is February 3rd if you are on my side of the globe, February 4th perhaps if you are in Europe, so or even further east of there. So please ensure that you get your KEPs complete and approved and merged so you can work on your features this release. That's all I had for announcements.
Thank you. Now let's go to excited topic of kubelet tracing. Sally, do you want to speak about it?
Sure. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, here, all right.
Let's see. I can share my screen. I don't have to. I can just talk about it. I don't have the ability to now.
Yeah, I gave you co-host. Let me stop sharing.
Okay, let's see. How do I share it?
Green button on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
If you use web, it may be a little bit harder as you need to give permissions.
Oh, okay. So portion screen. I've never shared on Zoom. That's all. So I will just.
If you send me a link, I can share for you.
What's that?
You can send me a link and I will share for you.
Okay, great. Thanks. That will be better. Well, the link is right there, actually.
Okay, this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go to the README if you want. But basically, I need a node review of this PR. It's been reviewed by the SIG instrumentation. It's been around for quite a while. Kind of been back and forth on the back burner of my plate. And so now I really would like to get it in for this enhancement freeze. If you click on the file, you can see it rendered, you know. It doesn't matter, I guess. Thanks. We'd like to add tracing to the kubelet. Currently, there's tracing, OpenTelemetry tracing in etcd, Kube API server, and in Cryo as well. So adding to the kubelet, instrumenting for the kubelet would logically come next. I just, like this past 5 minutes, updated it based on Elena's last PRR review. So it should be ready for a note, somebody from the node team to review it.
And if you receive a review from the David dashboard is from the node team, and also right now it's in the SIG instrument. So he been working on tracing for a while. So I think that you basically already got to know the reviewer coverage.
Okay, cool.
Also,
Great.
yes. David,
And
I had
yeah,
suggested Sally take this to
Thanks.
SIG Node just to make sure that we were aware of it, because
Yeah.
I'm one of the chairs at SIG Instrumentation, and David is our tech lead. So him and I have been reviewing this, and I even did a little bit of API review on this one as well. But we needed to make sure that, we need node approvers to be able to merge any code changes here. And I don't think it's limited to the parts of the code that David has approver on. So just wanted to make sure that everybody was okay with it, and that we can proceed with this, because we saw some demos and it looked really cool.
Yeah, thanks. I had every intention on setting up the demo again, but I do have screenshots of it that I can link in the chat. A few things I wanted to note now that I have my voice connected to my brain is that the tracing configuration that currently David is using a tracing configuration in the API server, and here I would add one for the kubelet. So we'll move that to component base rather than to a central location. So now after this implementation merges, any kube component can now use the tracing configuration, keep it uniform throughout Kubernetes. So that's one main thing, in addition to enabling tracing in kubelet, that will happen with this enhancement. And it will be experimental, of course. I'm really looking forward to experimenting with it, seeing it run at scale, seeing where it makes sense to add spans, where it doesn't, all of those things, they're hard to do just running locally and without a real environment up. I am going to send a link here to a repository that has some screenshots that you can check out. Plus it's a reproducible environment that you can follow if anyone else wanted to try it out. So here, that is in the chat. And again, I don't know why I can't, there. We do have tracing enabled in Cryo, just experimentally as well. And in this link that I just sent, that explains how you can enable it in Cryo per node. So what I haven't figured out yet is in the implementation PR, I have it all working, as you can see, but I don't think I have the places where it makes sense to be generating spans. I have added spans to the CRI, the places kind of where Cryo connects to kubelet, but other than that, it'll take review and input from everyone to tell me where to place the spans. Before the holidays, we did talk about that in SIG instrumentation, and I completely lost my notes. So
okay. Tracing is great. I mean, I have a lot of stake in the games as well. I will definitely review that. Thank you for bringing it up. So you said what is important from SIG Node to review is where to put spans and how to, like, when specifically to generate spans, and you already figured out also propagation of context.
yeah, I figured out, I have it working, so I know that the instrumentation works, that you can generate spans, but it's just a matter of, yeah, really figuring out what makes sense.
Yeah, and just for everybody understanding, like in Slack, somebody was complaining about building together container runtime and Kubernetes, and the OpenTelemetry turned out to be one of the dependencies that we currently have across many projects. So it will be a Go mode nightmare at some point. Hopefully we can just stabilize OpenTelemetry and it will solve all the problems.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the tracing is important. Actually, the couple years ago, one of my intern, not using the OpenTelemetry, but it's just want to build the tracing for Kubernetes. But we paused that project. The reason is because we want to using industry standard open parameter. So the parameters. So that's why since that time, I think David start working on those things and start participate from the signal, participate on the SIG instrument effort, try to help the push. So I'm glad to see this is come to some progress, made some progress and
Oh, great.
Yeah. So
thank you. Thanks.
You
And
got
yeah, I've been working with someone from Tufts University who, he has his PhD in telemetry and doesn't know that much about Kubernetes, but he has a lot to say about where collecting traces makes sense and where it doesn't. So his knowledge mixed with, our knowledge of Kubernetes is further going to push things along too.
Cool. That's great.
Any other questions on this topic? If not, let's move on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. So next one is batch, update on batch workgroup.
Hi. Yeah, so just following up on last week's meeting, and hopefully this is going to be quick. I'm not going to take a lot of your time. So we had a discussion with the topology-aware scheduling working group. I think Swati was in the meeting as well, as I can corroborate my understanding here. So the working group that is working on topology-aware scheduling, they would prefer to continue to organize as their own separate group, but having Swati like a co-chair on the on the batch working group to ensure a smooth transition to hopefully the wider umbrella, which is the batch working group. The idea here is that they are concerned that the topology-aware scheduling effort might not get too much traction if we merge it. And the proposal here was, okay, you could continue to organize as you're doing right now, but we would be getting updates in the batch working group, and hopefully, eventually, we will merge. Swati, do you want to add something to
Yeah,
that?
so I think like concern is not essentially that we won't get enough traction, but the concern is that the way we've been operating, the flow would probably not continue as we have been working on, probably because the scope of batch working group is going to be much more than just topology-aware scheduling. So just in the favor of that, we just decided that we'd continue as we've been operating and just reevaluate in 2-3 months time and see. Obviously we join the batch working group meetings in due time and relay the information back to SIG Node if that's what is needed, and as well as the topology-aware scheduling working group, and in due time just reevaluate if it still makes sense to continue those meetings. If not, we can just kind of fully converge with batch working group. But I think as things become clearer, we'd like to take that decision then, as opposed to now, because the batch working group is kind of would be at an early stage of formation, and how things are going to work would become clearer in due time. I left kind of a comment summarizing all this, but at the end I did defer the final decision to Dawn and Derek, given that they're SIG Node chair.
Yeah, Swati, I read your comment. I also agree with so basically we are all concerned it is just converging, right? So not and also continuous, sustainable, long term. And so I agree with you. And I have no objections to this batch group. And I think like last time I already stated, the only concern it is just worry about not converging, right? So and also it's beyond. But I do see the work group will have the value here because in the past, a lot of the topology a while and scheduling and CPU ping, all those kind of things, actually involve a lot beyond signal effort. And our engineer actually is make the little progress is just because we start from bottom up. And then we try to, so a lot of time it's being delayed. So with this work group, hopefully can help us to some extent the speed of the development and also can help create of like the forum for us to discussing and have the common ground. That's all. And Derek, how do you?
Yeah, I mean, I still felt like I have to catch up on the latest comments. The comment thread that I had on the Slack, I guess I didn't get to talk much too about last week while I was out, was there was a sentiment that progress wasn't being made, and I felt like actually as a SIG and a technical body, we had made a lot of progress. And one of my concerns was just if this was being viewed as a almost like it was like we weren't making progress because it wasn't known that we actually were making progress, I guess. And as Don, you know, we've had discussions around these topics for many, many years, and then sometimes the topics come forward and they say, well, the cluster-wide scheduler should have node local scheduling domains, and it should be able to assign the particular NUMA node and the particular memory bank that everything runs on. And what I was worried about was if some of the frustrations that might have been expressed on the original proposal or from the Slack exchange that was quoted on me was like wondering, well, why can't I just assign these things on the pod API? And I was worried that we're going to be in some ways maybe relitigating things that we had already litigated in the past. And so I was just trying to understand if there's a proposal to move away from where we were going, which was making kubelets node scheduling decisions introspectable, which is what I thought, Swati, we were on the path of doing, or of trying to make a larger philosophical change of approach to this. And I still have that concern, which is why I asked, like, what was the outcome of the work group? If it was like a technical recommendation, or like what was the actual deliverable going to be? Because it just felt very open-ended. And then when we ran the resource management work group, I think we ran that twice.
Yes.
And they all, we've made a lot of progress each time, but then they do kind of sputter out in some instances, and it becomes very fragmented. So anyway, I'll catch up on the discussion, but I don't know, Swati, if when you all had met, or if anybody else proposing work group batch was here, if there's a genuine intent to continue the path that we're on, or is there a more radical reformulation that's being maybe indirectly assumed by the formation of this working group?
I believe the intent is to continue at the path we are on, and then figure out if there are radical changes that have to be made, and that's when we bring back that information back to SIG Node and figure out like the strategy again. But for now, that's what I'm trying to convey here, that for now we just continue operating and continue operating based on the decisions that we made previously. So
things like the device, just one other comment, that things like the new proposals on new device plugins, like, is that intended to now take place at this working group meeting or to take place in this SIG? there's just so much overlap, right, in the problem domain. And,
Yeah,
I recognize we're all time fragmented.
yeah, I think in terms of topology-aware scheduling, at the moment, we are not considering that, but I believe batch working group is considering that as something they'd be looking at. And that's one of the reasons that we are concerned that that might impact our velocity. So we want to continue kind of operating the way we do.
So let me just answer this at the higher level, like, and I'm here because I initially proposed the formation of the working group. I'm Abdullah. So the way that we're thinking about it is that, like, we want to have, like, let's call them pillars, or in the working group. Like, one pillar is related to trying to improve the job API. Another one trying to introduce, like, job queuing, job level management. And then the third one that I was trying to get Swati on it, which is, like, related to on-node related high performance computing, works. We're not here to propose a radical change. We're actually trying to solve the problem of fragmentation. As people who are interested in batch, I want to have these discussions, like, related to topology-aware scheduling, in a place where I could potentially relate to other batch-related efforts. And that's why I was hoping that Swati will join us as a co-chair as well. She would be leading that effort, continue the things that you're doing right now, and actually hope that she would also try to influence the dynamic resource management, not influence it just like, okay, she's the point of contact, she's the one that is trying to advise, and basically potentially having part of those discussions in the batch working group to see how it would relate to job level management, for example. So we're not trying to change course, we're actually trying to defragment batch related discussions a little bit, and have some higher level context that can group them. So I mean, that's I guess the intent, and we completely acknowledge that there has been a lot of progress, not that there isn't. And I'm sorry if I, like, conveyed something else. It's just we want to understand how that relates to higher level big picture, right? If we're trying to improve the job API itself, or, for example, like, improve job level management and job level scheduling, how can we integrate that with dynamic resource management? How can we integrate that with NUMA-aware scheduling? So that is the pitch here, or the proposal. And that's why we were hoping that's, like, someone from Node who is interested in batch would be on the working group, in the working group, and active participant.
I see the difference. This is let me give me a little bit time. First thing, let me clarify. I think that Derek earlier I said that we didn't make much progress. It's not mean that Node didn't make much progress, but I can say that how painful for the Node feature, because it's bottom up, and then we try to influence other, like the application level API, not pod API. Pod API is, but like, whatever it is, other, like the higher level of the concept is so hard. And how hard we are trying to influence scheduler, SIG scheduler. Since this is from the SIG scheduler and from the SIG app, then I think this is the good things for us to converging and to help us a lot of feature. But I do see the difference, because the SIG node, when we try to solve problem, we first try to abstract the problem based on the efficiency, based on the performance, based on the pod. And I can see that other, like the SIG app and the SIG scheduler, when they try to solve problem, they first abstract it is from the higher level of the object concept. This is what I think about this work group can help. Another thing it is, I do think about in the past, I don't want we keep have the too many work group and too many SIG, because that's not efficient to create of the fragment. But here it is, I do see the value. Value, it is defragment. But on the other hand, I do ask, last week, I said, how we are going to call off, or when we are going to dismiss this work group, what is top? And I think the kind of argument I got, which I buy in at the end, is because they said, the first thing they need to figure out how to dismiss. Like, what's the goal? And once they achieve that goal, they will dismiss. But they need to have that work group and have representative from the involved of the SIG and to help define what it is, the exit criteria. And I think that's argument at the end convinced me. So maybe we should, I think the strategy mentioned like the 3 months, after 3 months, and we basically decided what's next. I buy that term. And so then we can.
I think if it's okay, I think to cut in there, I think what you just said is maybe me being out of date with latest updates on the PR, but it hits the core concern I had, right? Which was having done the resource management work group, which was the first work group in Kubernetes, like it reached a point where the scope was so unbounded. And eventually then we said, okay, we're going to focus the scope on, let's just get a roadmap for the next 12 months on what we're going to go action on, and then, disseminate and be done. If there's a very clear exit criteria in the charter that alludes to what you're describing to Dawn, like I can get behind that for sure. But the parts I had read prior was basically taking elements of individual SIG's scope of responsibility and leaving it open-ended for basically what I first read, and this could be an error on my part, as in perpetuity. And if instead it's been updated, or I misrecall to say like we're going to define a roadmap or recommend something, I think that's a clear end state. And I say this, Abdullah, just in the experience of having done this before. Like you will be happier for having had that than you otherwise, because that was our prior experience. So I'll catch up on the PR, but it sounds like things were going positively in that direction, and if it's very time bound, I think this seems fine.
Yeah, no, just please comment on the PR if you're looking for a specific language that basically captures what you had in mind, and we're happy to update it and make sure that it is taken into account.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, around like the defragmentation, that the goal, okay, we should get these working groups into one working group with explicit verticals, each working on that specific feature, etc. Yeah.
But the struggle I sometimes have is, and I don't always equate a working group to execution, in the sense that like it's still the SIG that is supposed to own the code. And so that's like the deliverable I was tending to look towards was like concrete recommendation, or maybe an enhancement, right? And not necessarily like unbounded open implementation,
That sounds good. Yeah, I think that's a better language or framing, like recommendations on how to handle, topology-aware scheduling end to end, for example. That could be like one strong outcome out of the working group. But I think already the topology-aware scheduling is making progress towards that. Yeah. We just try to formulate it in the context of, again, as I mentioned, an end-to-end journey, how it would look like end-to-end, for example. And in the working group, we want to propose, job level management, job level queuing. Again, we could have discussions there. Okay, how we can represent NUMA topologies in the queue, for example. Maybe this is not going to be.
Maybe another question, Abdullah, would help me. As in SIG apps, is there a general desire to like make core Kubernetes a first-class job scheduling system?
That's what we have been trying to do for the past year. So we tried. We contributed a lot of improvements to the job API, we formed some sort of like a good collaboration with Magic, who was the co-chair owning that package, and he's a co-chair on this working group.
Yeah, and that's sounds positive. It's just it could be that I was out of sync with what the SIG had felt maybe prior, which was we were not trying to make core Kubernetes a full, feature-rich job scheduling system versus leaving that to I guess other projects that might have been building around the core. But either way, it sounds like I'm behind a little bit and I will catch up, but I would just want to keep it focused on a clear outcome or deliverable and not open-ended.
Derek, I don't think about you are behind. I think all your concern raised here also, I totally agree. I raised the similar concern. This also, even I agree when I talk to the team, and then I agree to this work group, but I also have the same concern as you. So this is why I raised off the when to dismiss this work group, and what is your concrete goal you want to deliver, and what it is your exit criteria. And I hope, at least I don't see this type of proposal. There's the threat mentioned that is 3 months, but I don't think in the proposal itself did literally give the timeline, and we need to include that one in the proposal, and literally say, at least if we cannot give like define what's the clearly exit criteria, and we need to say, first month decided, those kind of things, something like that. So yeah. That will be make us, then we can reiterate those things, right? So then, and just like our experience, it is the group actually not just fragment the SIGs, and also not own that execution. So end up each SIG have to own the execution, but not really, if we don't execute well, not really fill the gap about the communication. But if we can execute well, definitely it is like the.
Just one last comment. Like, I really like the framing that Derek had. Like, it gave me a better idea of how to frame the deliverables. I think a really good way of saying recommendations on job API improvements, recommendations on job queuing improvements, and maybe a discussion whether that should be in core or outside core, or what kind of, for example, like hooks that we need to add if we have decided to do it outside. And then the third pillar is, again, how to make Kubernetes friendlier for HPC with the work that we've been doing for NUMA-aware scheduling and CPU manager and whatnot. So I guess that makes it a little bit more concrete. Like, have at least the least bit is dismissing is we have clear recommendations of how that whole ecosystem is going to be better for batch.
Yeah, I think Abdul, what I'll do after the call as well is show you an output of what came from the resource management work group, which was just a proposed roadmap on topics. And some of the things we're still executing on today, like swap support, right? And we said we can do this later or that type of thing. So let me send that to you afterwards. And then if you want to make an update to the PR in light of today's discussion, feel free, and then I'm happy to review. But I'm not, hopefully I'm not coming across like negative versus just trying to give you some tips on having run something similar in the past, what you might actually find will work best. So
no, that's actually great. Like, again, our goal is just to improve batch experience, and we really need all the help here and from previous experiences on how to actually navigate that in the community, and what actually is practical, what's not. So that's great. Yeah, thank you so much.
Great. If no more topics on that, let's move on to Vinay. Vinay, do you want to update us on in-place update?
Yeah, hi. So I think we are, the PR is still in holding pattern. There is the enhancements PR, the enhancements request 3153. I think it's more of a formality at this point. So Don and Derek, if you can please take a look at this and get this merged before the freeze. I just don't want this to slip through the cracks.
I'll do this now, Vinay, and I saw, you saw the comment on there.
Yeah.
I was out last week and I'm getting over an illness right now, but I am going through your PR, and
yeah,
I will get that done. So
yeah,
apologies.
Yeah, and I think the timing works quite well. I'm still neck deep in my company project, the eBPF networking stuff, but I'm hoping that we'll get the release done in the next couple of weeks, and then I'll have some time to address any major issues. But I'm still going to seek out help. I'm going to create issues for most of the things, and we'll fix them in the 124 milestone as much as possible, at least the ones that are not very high priority. Does that, I think that's pretty much it from me. We'll follow up next week.
Thanks, Vinay. I tagged the enhancement PR, and hopefully I can get through the rest of the review shortly.
Great, thank you.
Okay, the next topic is file size logs. Webcam, if you hear.
Yeah, hi. So, yeah, okay. So this is regarding the log issue related to the container log, rotating container. So here I just wanted to get some leads or inputs from your side, so that can help us in examining the issue and investigating and resolving that. So any help?
Hey, Vaibhav, so Mrinal here. So Peter and I will take a look. You're seeing this with Cryo, right? So we can sync up on the issue or talk on Slack.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question about this. So in the in-place vertical scaling, we had one, I think Derek brought this up, where empty dir-backed file systems, if the containers exit, then the quota that's used by the containers goes to the parent, and it sort of, we lose accounting for it. I'm wondering if there is a root cause here that's common and can be addressed.
Yeah, so Vinay, that was only for memory-backed volumes.
Yeah,
that's something that's on TempFS. So for this, this is just a regular file that's not in a memory-backed volume. So I trust that Peter and Mrinal can help chase this down. In general, though, we've had, I'm trying to recall on the ephemeral storage accounting should be covering the writable layer of the container. It should be covering logs. But there were a couple edge cases, depending on how your image FS was structured, or even how your root FS was structured, where there might have been gaps and in capabilities. So I'm sure Peter or Mrinal and anybody else who wants to jump in can help chase that down. But ephemeral storage is not as rich in capability as, say, what we have with CPU and memory and others. So
okay, so unlikely that it's a common root cause.
Yeah, not likely at all. And then this was related. I know there was a previous PR a couple weeks ago where someone was proposing to enhance the XFS quota implementation, or try to help that get over the limit. I thought in that the logging DIRs weren't being tracked under XFS quota. So maybe Vibhav and Peter Mrinal, when you do explore this, if we can see that we all get to the same accurate level of understanding, or help me understand if I was wrong on that, that would be helpful. But I was pretty sure that it was not included in that as well.
Yep, we'll take a look.
Okay, next topic. Next topic is by me. I created this issue once we get into we start using V1 of CRI API, and it was introduced in 120, and now in 123 we start using it, and it's already diverged a little bit from the moment it was introduced. So we have various versions of like same version of CRI API v1 being already released with different set of features that led to the question, how do we emerge CRI API? Do we version it? Do we do anything about it? And I started this document explaining requirements so far about CRI API. I linked it in the meeting notes on this issue. So if you can start commenting on requirements, like what we need for CRI API, then we can form how to achieve that. Just to give a brief overview, on a single node, you may have so many components implementing CRI API. You may have kubelet that calls into container runtime and separately calls into image service proxy. We have open source projects doing image service proxy to enhance how images being pulled. And these two components, like container runtime typically would be versioned with, not typically, like container runtime sometimes versioned with OS. Kubelet is versioned by system administrator or cloud vendor. Image service proxy may be versioned by some third-party vendor. And they all implement in different versions of CRI API. And they call into each other. And image service proxy, it is a proxy, but it will call to container runtime back typically. And then there may be CRI tools that are versioned by end user. So some system admin or like somebody who want to troubleshoot something may install CRI tools, bring their own version of it. And it will also be compiled with its own version of CRI API. And the CRI tools will call to container runtime, as well as third-party daemon sets that are doing some sort of monitoring or security analysis. They also can be brought by end users, and they also implement a version of CRI API, and this version may be different, and a single cluster may have like so many versions of that implemented. Anyway, that just points at the problems that so many versions being used. And if you look at graph of invocations, we get into the requirements that versions of CRI API needs to be backward and forward compatible. So whenever we develop kubelet, it needs to be we need to declare the minimal Kubernetes version this kubelet supports. So let's say we working on 124, and we may declare that it supports all CRI API versions down to 120 when it was introduced. And then if container runtime decided to implement CRI API for 120, kubelet can still work. And I propose we do like conformance tests on that. And then opposite is also true. If kubelet 123 that we just released will be used by customers, and they will decide to go with containerd of 1.6, that is 1.7, whatever that is released and compiled with latest version of Kubernetes in maybe year and a half with 126, then it still needs to be supported, and we probably want to have this forward compatibility as well. So those are requirements that I listed here, and the reasoning for that. Please comment on the requirements, and then we can, given these requirements, we can formulate the policy how API needs to be versioned.
Thanks, Sergey, to send this.
Yeah. If there is no quick feedback,
I think.
Comment.
So, Sergey, it makes sense to solidify this for sure, and have a common guideline. And I think maybe we can also look across the project, like what other components using gRPC are doing. I think Tim Hawkin poked some folks from other projects, right?
Yeah, I already went to SIG architecture meeting, and what else? There was a project, and so far there was feedback that it was never formulated. So there is no formal definition how versioning needs to be done on gRPC APIs. So that would be first. Yeah. Okay. But yeah,
I assume device plugins are a very similar problem for us.
I think storage is different. Derek, I really try. We are not getting into the storage cases.
No, not storage. I'm just saying, I'm thinking of other hooks we had in kubelet. And I was just wondering if, Sergey, we wanted to grow this to be just a kubelet gRPC project statement and not necessarily specific to CRI, because we have other gRPC endpoints, I thought.
You're suggesting to extend it to all gRPC rather than just the CRIP?
At least from the SIG, I guess, right?
It makes sense. Thank you.
Yep, it makes sense. We're also talking about moving CNI to the gRPC and V2 of CNI, so we'd have the same problem there. We just have to have a common way to define these.
Yeah,
We can make that work.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Hopefully generics will make this easier.
Generic to the hope for everything. Anyway, thank you. Next one is, I don't know what this is about. Oh, CPU. Swati, I know you're on the call.
And Marlo. So the quick summary is we put in the CPU use cases doc a while ago. We've been asking for comments as far as clearing up various questions we have on items. We have a bunch of them. Requesting some last, if people could read through this and give any guidance over what the kubelet currently can and cannot do, and where the technology is, and what parts of the documentation aren't accurate, because we'd like to start clearing up the documentation and start figuring out where we can put in resources, because we have use cases we care about too, right? As far as getting CPU management, bigger, better, faster. Maybe not bigger, better, faster.
Yeah, and then Abdul, I encourage you, if you haven't seen this talk, to review this as well, because it seems potentially related to what we were discussing earlier on the batch item.
Yeah, I've already troubled him with it, so there's that.
Thank you, Marlo. And Mike?
Yeah, so I didn't actually start the Slack thread, but we're running into the same problem at Adobe where we're trying to switch to cgroups v2. And basically what happens is the C advisor that's running in Kubernetes 1.21 and 1.22, the node metrics for CPU and memory are missing because of a bug inside of C advisor that's not supported until 0.43. Kubernetes 1.23 has 0.43 in it. And basically, we're trying to find out what would be the possibility involved in getting that, that C advisor upgrade back ported to 1.21 and 1.22.
Do you have a bug track in that beyond the Slack message?
I don't. Joe, do you happen to remember on that? I know I've seen some tickets about it, kind of saying, "Oh, it's metric server. Oh no, it's C advisor. No, it's this." I don't know that there's anything specific to the findings that's been from this Slack thread. I'm happy to create one. But I didn't see one specifically calling out cgroup v2s and this, just more vague, closed, or not our problem sort of stuff.
Yeah, Mike, I think we'd love to be able to help you out here. I guess what I was maybe not aware of is, what are your expectations on 121 when running with cgroups v2? And I just want to make sure they were in line with present capability and support levels from the project. And if you'd worked with maybe Mernal or Giuseppe or any of the engineers who had been helping push it forward to be up to speed on present capability.
So I'm new to a lot of this and cgroup v2, so I'm not super familiar with it. What we were trying to do was upgrade to the latest flat car image. It's a newer flat car image to get some CVEs fixed and patched, and they switched to cgroups v2 by default. And when we noticed that when running that, the node metrics were missing from metric server, and we were trying to run C advisor as a daemon set as a workaround to that. But then we found from that thread that happened last week, towards the end of last week in SIG instrumentation, that perhaps the node itself would not be able to do pod evictions when it memory and CPU pressure, which implied to us that it may be, with those metrics missing, just running the C advisor as a daemon set may not be a feasible workaround.
I just want to say that SIG version 2, actually we are not, we even not, the Kubernetes not support. I mean, SIG Node not claim alpha support for SIG version 2 in the, at least 1.21, if I remember correctly. There's the minimal alpha, it is the 1.22. Manu, please correct me, and David.
Yeah. I think 121 is too old because fixes have been going into it, and like just yesterday, David Porter and I were talking about how we can use the new PSI for eviction. So we haven't even like started handling that, but I'm not sure whether you're talking about like V2 specific eviction or just the existing eviction not working because of the way you're running C advisor. And I think that we'll just have to drill down into like what exactly you're hitting in your setup.
Yeah, so I mean, the basic setup is when you try to hit the C advisor port for kubelet, the node CPU and memory metrics don't come back; they come back with 0.
Yeah, I guess, Mike, I'd recommend following up on, there's a KEP related to cgroups v2 in the Kubernetes enhancement repo, which would tell you what the capability was for a particular lease and at what level. And right now we're trying to graduate support for cgroups v2 to a higher level, but we hadn't yet reached that. So there are a number of limitations you might see. And if you were having a near-term issue, I don't know if it's possible in your environment, but I would probably see if you could override that default that your distribution was having to go back to V1, and just or that seems like, if it were me, if that was possible, that's what I would do. And then as a SIG here, there's a group of us who are interested in trying to get V2 support smooth out of the box. So just with my own Red Hat hat on right now, like Fedora was wanting to default right, and we're trying to be able to get parity in appropriate upstreams. So
okay. So to kind of rephrase what I heard, there's a KEP for cgroups v2. It hasn't gone beyond alpha or fully implemented yet. And so the recommendation is, until that's done, stay on cgroups v1.
Yeah, because your runtime itself also has to be v2 aware. So I don't know what container runtime you were running.
Right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that one is further. That one doesn't get in. At least I can speak to. I know has moved further along, but there's just a lot of complexity in this one. So at least catch up on the KEP, and if you wanted to help us drive this even further forward, you can see the authors on that KEP and reach out, and we'd be happy to help, because we do want to get the project to move forward.
Yeah, and I think the best way to help is to like stick to the latest versions of Kubernetes, because that's where all the fixes that you've been working have gone in. Like it won't help if you're using an older version.
Yeah, we're working towards that. We also have EKS dependencies, which limit what versions we can run as well.
Okay.
So
yeah, I just wanted to follow up, say the same thing, because we have been fixing some issues with cgroup v2, and it's kind of challenging because we can't just backport some of the C advisor versions. They have like a lot of changes between versions, so we can't. It's not a simple thing to just backport the whole C advisor release to an older Kubernetes version. So trying the latest version is definitely a recommendation. And we did put out some smaller patches for older versions, but I'm not sure if this specific issue was fixed. I think maybe in 122, but 121 might have been too old.
The default for kubelet 122 is cgroups v2, right?
What do you mean by default? Sorry.
If you don't indicate a cgroups driver in your kubelet config, it defaults to cgroups v2 starting with Kubernetes 122.
Tony, there's maybe a misunderstanding there. So the cgroup driver allows you to say, does the kubelet speak to systemd or cgroup fs?
Mhm.
And that setting needs to be configured consistently in your runtime, whether that's Docker Engine or Cryo or whatever, or Containerd. But then for cgroups v1 or v2 enablement, there's no special flag in the kubelet. It just looks to see what the cgroup subsystem is on the host, and we'll try to work appropriately. It's just right now, the project itself doesn't have a beyond alpha support for supporting a cgroups v2 configured host.
I think that Tony, maybe there's the problem. It is the systemd configuration you have. So systemd can boot with the cgroup version 1 or version 2, and the Kubernetes actually is dynamic to figure out. So I think that your node maybe have to during the boot time you need to configure the systemd. It is the cgroup version 1 or version 2.
Yeah, we have some hacky workarounds we can do to default it back to cgroup v1. We were just hoping that it was a cAdvisor patch and we'd be able to backport, cherry pick that back and then, be good to go. But it sounds like there's a lot more involved in it than that. And so we're going to have to take a different approach than what we had been hoping for, which is fine. It's totally understandable.
I think based on this conversation, it feels like maybe we should update the documentation or write a blog on where things are at. So it maybe it'll help the user community, like where we are at and what are the next steps.
Yeah, I think that might be useful because I think there's some confusion on where exactly cgroup v2 support is based on what version.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can work on that if anyone else wants to help. Happy to collaborate.
Okay, then, thank you. And Mike, if you want to continue conversation, perhaps there should be bug. Bugs are typically easier to track. If you're satisfied with the answer, yeah, it's fine. We can just close conversation.
Okay, yeah, it was pre 123, so that's why I didn't think of opening an actual bug for it. Because I know it's already 123, that version is already in there. So do you think it's still worth opening a Git issue on it?
If you want to continue, like if you have extra questions, unlikely we'll backport it to 121. It's just too much of a change.
All right, great. Thank you so much, everyone, for clarifying what's going on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Is there anything else? We over time, 1 minute over time. If nothing else, thank you everybody for attending. Bye-bye.